Nightmares. Story 1. The first night. Elias Langston had not dreamed in 20 years. Doctors said it was due to a rare sleep disorder. Neurologists couldn't pinpoint it, but they assured him it wasn't dangerous. Most people would consider dreamless sleep a blessing. Elias thought so too, until the nightmares began. They came suddenly, without warning, like a flood bursting through a dam long forgotten. The first night, Elias found himself running down a hallway lit by flickering fluorescent lights. His footsteps echoed unnaturally, as if the walls themselves were whispering in his ears. He didn't know what he was running from, only that it was gaining. He turned a corner and saw a woman. Her back was to him, her head tilted at an impossible angle. Her long black hair hung limp over her shoulders, soaked as if dipped in something thick. Blood? Oil? "Help me," he called. She didn't move. Then her head twisted completely around, an unnatural wet snapping sound, and her face was his. But the skin was peeled back, raw and weeping. Elias awoke screaming, drenched in sweat. His heart thundered in his chest. The digital clock on the nightstand blinked, 3:33 a.m. He didn't sleep again that night. The second night. The next day at work, Elias nodded off during a budget meeting. His coworkers didn't notice, but he did. In that instant of unconsciousness, he was plunged back into the nightmare. This time he was in his childhood home. Everything was dust-covered and silent. He walked through the hallway, past photos of his family, though every face was blacked out with ink. A child sobbed in one of the rooms. The sound filled him with dread. He opened the door to his old bedroom. A boy sat on the bed. Elias recognized him. It was him, age 6. The child looked up, tear-streaked and broken. "They're inside," the child whispered. "Who?" Elias asked. The boy opened his mouth to answer, but a hand burst from his throat, dragging itself out like a spider, long fingers crawling up his face. The child convulsed as the thing took hold. Elias screamed himself awake. He left work early. 3. The doctor. He visited Dr. Melora Finch, a sleep therapist who had studied his case years ago. "You never dreamed. Now you can't stop," she said, flipping through his file. "That's not medically normal. Something's changed. Are you under stress?" "No more than usual." "Have you experienced any trauma lately?" "No." Dr. Finch frowned. Dreams are the brain's way of processing emotion, memory, fear. If your subconscious is purging something after years of silence, it might be volatile. "Volatile?" he asked. "Nightmares are symptoms, Elias. What you're describing, recurring night terrors with shared elements, time loss, physical reactions, it borders on parasomnia, possibly even hypnagogic hallucination." "I can feel them even when I'm awake," Elias said quietly. "Sometimes I see things out of the corner of my eye." Finch leaned forward. "You're sure you're not hallucinating?" "I don't think so." "Then what you're experiencing might be more than just psychological." The third night. That night, Elias dreamed again. He stood in an endless black field under a red sky. In the distance he saw silhouettes, figures writhing, headless, limbs bent backwards. One of them began crawling toward him. Not walking. Crawling. Back arched like a spider. Its movements were jerky, wet. He tried to run, but his feet sank into the ground, thick, sticky. Blood? Numbered teeth. The ground was a field of shattered teeth. They dug into his skin, cutting deeper with every step. The crawling figure reached him. It had no eyes, just hollow sockets and a mouth full of fingernails. It whispered, "You left us behind." Elias woke gasping. Blood covered his sheets. His hands were cut. Tiny teeth-like punctures lined his palms. 5. The book desperate, Elias searched for answers in dreams, online forums, occult websites, even the dark web. One message kept appearing in forums he visited. "The dreaming is bleeding into waking. The gate is open. Find the Book of Sleep." A month ago, he would have laughed. Now he followed the trail. He found an address in a hidden message board, an occult bookstore in a rundown part of town. It had no name, just a symbol, a bleeding eye inside a triangle. Inside, it smelled of mold and old paper. A blind woman ran the shop. Her eyes were covered by a red silk band. "You're not supposed to be dreaming," she said before he spoke. "You know what's happening?" She nodded. "You've crossed the line. Where's the book?" She reached behind the counter and pulled out a small, leather-bound volume. It was colder than ice. "No refunds," she said. The Book of Sleep. Elias took the book home. Its pages were yellowed and brittle, written in a language he didn't understand until he did. The more he read, the more the words reshaped themselves into something his mind could grasp. It wasn't a book. It was a door. It detailed a realm between dreaming and death. Nethal, a place where lost dreams gather and birth entities, creatures sustained by human consciousness. They were never just dreams, Elias whispered. He read of one in particular, Zelrith, the Weeper of Night, a being sealed away by a dreamless man centuries ago. Dreamless, Elias muttered. He realized he had been the prison, and something had broken him open. The fourth night. The nightmares were different now, more coherent, the same field, the same red sky. But now the figures spoke. They knew his name. Elias. He walked through a doorway made of bone. Inside was a massive eye suspended in air, bleeding ink that hissed as it touched the ground. A voice spoke, not into his ears, but directly into his bones. "Your dreams fed me. You starved me. But now you bleed." He tried to scream, but his mouth was sewn shut. The real-world cracks reality began to falter. He saw dream creatures flicker in mirrors. Street lamps blinked to the rhythm of his nightmares. People he passed looked wrong, their mouths slightly too wide, their eyes unfocused. At night, he heard scratching from the walls, then whispers, then names of people he had forgotten, people who had died. He opened the fridge one night and found a single human eye inside, floating in milk. The digital clock now always showed 3:33, even when it shouldn't. The ritual. The Book of Sleep spoke of a ritual to banish Zelrith, but it came with a price. He needed an offering, a nightmare birthed in love. He thought of his mother, how she died in her sleep when he was 10. He remembered the dream he had the night she passed, a blackbird pecking at her closed eyelids. He returned to the field one last time, this time by choice, with the book in hand. He drew the circle. He spoke the words. The ground cracked. The eye opened. "You offer a memory?" the voice mocked. "No," Elias said. "I offer myself." The price. The dream exploded into screams. A storm of faces swirled around him, people he had forgotten, fears he had buried. They tore at his flesh, but he stood still. He kept chanting. Blood filled his throat. His eyes melted. Still, he chanted. Then, silence, and light, and darkness again. Aftermath. Elias never woke up. He was found in bed, eyes open, mouth locked in a scream. But his body showed no signs of trauma, except for the cuts on his hands. They looked like tiny teeth marks. The Book of Sleep was gone. But some say it appears again, when someone long dreamless begins to remember. And every year, at exactly 3:33 a.m., Elias appears in other people's dreams, screaming. The first dream. Ethan Cole hadn't slept properly in weeks. It started with a single nightmare, a gray corridor, narrow and endless, with walls that pulsed like flesh. Every time he stepped forward, a whisper would echo behind him. He never saw anyone. He just felt them, watching, waiting. The first time he woke up soaked in sweat, heart pounding like a jackhammer. Just a dream, he thought. Stress, work deadlines, the usual. But then came the second night, and the third. The dream didn't change. It continued, as if he never woke up. Each night he began in the same corridor but further in, as though his soul was traveling through this nightmare in installments. And each morning, he woke up more exhausted than before, his eyes sunken, his limbs heavy, his mind fogged like a mirror in a steam-filled room. His girlfriend, Lila, noticed first. "You're not yourself, Ethan," she said one morning as she handed him coffee. "You look like someone ran you over." Ethan managed a weak smile. "I think I'm being haunted by my own dreams." She chuckled, but he didn't. 2. A voice in the corridor. By the end of the week, Ethan stopped dreaming. He started experiencing. He'd wake up with scratches on his arms, bruises around his ankles as though hands had gripped him tightly. He swore he could still feel the icy breath of whatever stalked him through the corridor. The whispers grew louder, now calling his name. "Ethan, come deeper." He tried to fight it. Sleeping pills, white noise machines, herbal teas, nothing worked. The corridor always returned, dragging him further into its grotesque bowels. One night, something changed. He found a door, rusty, red and pulsing with a low, guttural hum like a distant scream. The door had no handle, just a slit, barely wide enough for fingers. Against his better judgment, he pushed it open. Behind it was a room full of beds, and on each bed a sleeping person. But their faces were grotesquely disfigured. Eyeless sockets, torn mouths, swollen skin, all of them thrashed violently, moaning in their sleep. One woman had her arms chained to the bed frame, her lips sewn shut. Ethan turned to run, but found the door gone. "You are one of us now," the voice whispered from above. When he looked up, the ceiling was breathing, rising and falling like a great lung. 3. The real wounds. The next morning, Ethan didn't wake up in bed. He woke up on the floor, nails dug into the hardwood, blood on his fingers. Lila screamed when she saw him. "Oh my God, what the hell happened to you?" His back was torn with deep scratches, as if claws had raked across him. Ethan had no memory of it, only the whisper of, "You belong here." They went to a sleep clinic. The doctor, a young woman named Dr. Renee Marlowe, ran tests and asked questions. Ethan was honest. She didn't laugh. In fact, she looked disturbed. "You're not the first to report this type of dream," she said quietly, reviewing his notes. The corridor, the door, the whispering, even the room full of dreamers. Ethan blinked. "What are you talking about?" "We call it the waking nightmare syndrome. Only a handful of cases ever reported. Most people don't survive past the 10th night." His skin turned to ice. "What happens after the 10th night?" She looked him straight in the eyes. "They fall asleep and never wake up." Nightmare group Dr. Marlowe invited him to a support group. 5 others, all victims of similar nightmares. They met in the clinic basement where walls were lined with dream journals and EEG monitors. There was Elena, a middle-aged nurse who claimed to have seen her dead daughter in the corridor. Jared, a teen who hadn't spoken in weeks, just drew terrifying things, twisted figures with sewn eyes and screaming mouths. Rajiv, a professor, who had carved symbols into his arms to keep from sleeping. And Ava, a mute woman who wore gloves because her fingernails were missing. She communicated by writing and had scrawled the same message over and over. "We never sleep alone." During the meeting, the lights flickered. Ethan felt a chill slither up his spine. "Something followed me out," he whispered. They all looked at him. Elena nodded slowly. "It always does." 5. The 9th night. Ethan tried not to sleep. He drank coffee until he vomited, walked the streets at 2 a.m., played loud music, but exhaustion claimed him like a hunter stalking prey. And this time he didn't wake up in the corridor. He woke up in the room, the one with the beds. Only now, all the other dreamers were gone. Except one. Lila. She lay on the central bed, thrashing, face twisted in pain. Her mouth was wide open, but no sound came out. Ethan screamed her name, ran to her, but invisible hands gripped his arms and yanked him back. "This is your doing," the voice said. The walls split open, oozing black tar. From it emerged a figure, tall, faceless, its body made of writhing limbs and eyes that blinked independently. Its hands were long and sharp, like needles. It pointed at Ethan. "You open the door." The dreamers die. He woke up screaming. Lila didn't. She was in a coma. The doctors couldn't explain it. Her vitals were normal. Brain activity flatlined during sleep cycles, just like the others. Because Ethan checked, all 5 members of the support group were also hospitalized. All unconscious. All alive. All trapped. The same night, Jared died. Then Rajiv. Their bodies thrashed violently in their sleep and then stopped. Dead. Dr. Marlowe called Ethan that night. "You're the only one still waking up. Why?" He didn't know, but he had to find out. He made a choice. He would go back into the dream on purpose. The descent. That night, Ethan took an overdose of melatonin and valerian root. He chained himself to his bed, hoping it would keep his body from hurting itself. The corridor welcomed him like an old friend. It was darker now. The walls pulsed faster, the whispers louder. This time, he ran. He ran deeper than he'd ever dared until he reached the red door again. But something was different. It was open. Inside, the beds were gone. Only darkness remained. A stairway descended, carved in bone and lined with flickering candles that burned black flames. He walked. The steps twisted downward in impossible geometry, bending space and time. He passed rooms filled with mirrors that reflected not him, but the nightmare version of him. Eyeless, screaming, hands raw from clawing walls. Finally, he reached the bottom. The entity waited. "We are the unseen," it hissed. "We feed on your dreams, on your fear. You brought us more. A feast of minds." Ethan trembled. "Let them go. Take me. You already belong to us, but we will make a trade." The trade. The entity offered him a blade, carved from a single bone, slick with blood that steamed in the cold air. "One of you must die here, for the rest to wake." He refused. It pointed to a mirror. Through it, he saw Lila convulsing in her coma, Elena, Ava, Rajiv, all twitching violently, trapped in eternal sleep. "Kill one here," the entity rasped, "or lose them all." Ethan screamed. He cursed the entity, cursed himself, and then he made a decision. He raised the blade and turned it on himself. Waking, Ethan stabbed the blade into his chest, but instead of pain, there was release. The dream exploded into light. The corridor cracked, the red door shattered, and the ceiling of the nightmare collapsed into stardust. He felt himself falling, not downward, but upward. He woke up gasping, unchained, bleeding, but alive. Lila was in the hospital room, eyes wide open. Elena woke up. She whispered. So did Ava. Ethan smiled weakly, but Dr. Marlowe didn't. 10. The final nightmare. She closed the door behind her and stared at Ethan. "You said you stabbed yourself," she said. "I did." She looked at his chest. "There's no wound, Ethan." His blood turned cold. "You never left the dream." The truth. He tried to run, but the walls of the hospital shifted, stretched, melted. Outside his window was the corridor. The red door stood in the courtyard. Dr. Marlowe smiled, and her skin began to peel back. Underneath, it waited. "You thought you escaped?" It hissed. "You're in the deepest dream now. The final layer." Ethan screamed, but his mouth made no sound. And in the real world, he lay on a hospital bed, eyes closed, heart steady. Another dreamer added to the list. Epilogue, Dream Feeders. Weeks later, Lila visits the hospital. She sits beside Ethan, tears in her eyes. "Please come back," she whispers. "Please." But he doesn't move. In the hallway, Dr. Marlowe watches through the glass. She writes a note in her clipboard. Subject number 31, Ethan Cole. Status, REM locked. Notes, nightmare sustained. Feed stable. She closes the file and smiles.